Hey, how's it going everybody? It's DJ Sketch and welcome back to the channel. And today we're going to be looking at some more horror themed games for the month of October. Since we're on the subject, F.E.A.R is one of those games that has always stuck with me ever since I played it back on the Xbox 360 way back in the day. And it's remained one of my favorite first person shooter franchises to this day, since it's a fine blend of action and some legit scary moments through its 6 to 10 hour campaign. Since it's almost Halloween, I felt it was appropriate to take a look at the series as a whole, and we'll start from the beginning. So, F.E.A.R, also known as First Encounter Assault Recon, is an FPS/survival horror hybrid game developed by Monolith Productions and published by Vivendi branch of Warner Brothers and Universal Games. Released first on the PC in October of 2005 and was ported to the Xbox 360 and PS3 by Day One Studios. You play as the Point Man, a silent protagonist with superhuman reflexes allowing you to slow down time in a fashion a lot like Max Payne. Your task is going in with your team, the F.E.A.R unit, to investigate a series of supernatural occurrences in the city of Fairport, tied to the paranormal entity in the form of Alma Wade, a young girl with telepathic powers, alongside tracking down and terminating the infamous Paxton Fettel, a serial killer with a penchant for consuming flesh, amongst other things. Though they are not alone. They also have the backing of the Armachem Technology Corporation, or ATC for short, and their fleet of telepathically controlled clone super soldiers known as the Replicas that are under the control of Paxton Fettel. Though the question throughout the game is who is really in control of all this here. The answer is slowly unraveled in a slow burn style narrative that only escalates from the second you touch down from the chopper. Gameplay wise, at its core, you can feel the influence of Japanese horror tropes, and if you're familiar with the genre, you'll recognize the ties to films like The Ring. The levels of psychological horror seen within are a major gameplay element, which is executed very well here, on top of some really tight gunplay. Playing through the game's 8 intervals, which are a series of fairly lengthy levels broken up into sections, and where you'll traverse several areas of the Origin facility. And this has some legitimately scary moments tossed in to throw you off your game, or in some cases, throw your controller across the room if it really gets in your head. With quick reflexes and a lot of firepower, you'll go through the game cautiously while waiting to see what will happen next. Enemy AI is also pretty smart in this game, even on the casual setting, and the enemies will often be in squads which will break up and flank you, as well as use tactics to bring you out of cover. They can also usually tell when you're coming, especially if you have the flashlight on. Several enemies can also deal heavy damage if you aren't careful, but that's where the health and stamina injections scattered across the game come in to boost your stats and give you a bit more bullet time for the situations where just regular wits aren't going to be enough. There's also quite a few moments where enemies will overwhelm you, especially when the adds and majors are on the board at the same time. But the game does give you a bevy of weapons to dispatch them, and also gives you one of the best shotguns in FPS gaming. There's a pretty solid arsenal of weapons at your disposal, like an assault rifle, SMGs, rocket and particle launchers, just to name a few. Also, the railgun is just flat out fantastic to use too, as well as the penetrator, which will also nail enemies to the wall. So you can get creative with how you want to go about each encounter, and visually, the effects still hold up even now. Graphics wise, this was developed on Monolith's Lithtech engine, which utilizes normal mapping and parallax mapping, which gives the textures a more realistic appearance. The lighting and effects work here is also still pretty impressive. There are some moments in the game visually that even now still have quite the impact on the feel of the game, and considering this came out about 15 years ago, it still stands the test of time with its graphic aesthetics. Especially when everything is in slow motion, particle effects, and the jibbing of enemies looks pretty sweet still. And also the shotgun animations are gas, dude. The shotgun can and will literally rip enemies in half like tissue, and F.E.A.R doesn't really shy away from some pretty gruesome kill animations. But aside from that, everything else graphically follows suit and is very easy on the eyes. Sound wise, this game absolutely nails the creepy atmospheric feel, and also has a lot of audio cues to push the narrative, like the answering machines on the phones that you'll find throughout the campaign that reveal more of the plot as to how this all got started. So when you can, stop and listen to those messages. There's also a lot of laptops around to extract data from that your teammates will decode and break down over your intercom. That'll fill in the gaps as to what's been happening underneath the surface so far. The sounds of gunfire and explosions are also pretty beefy here too, though the sound will also cue enemies as to where you are, and they will pinpoint you based on the noise that you're making. The developers also carry over the Japanese horror influence through with the creaks and cricks that can also be generally unnerving. It's a great utilization of sounds and engineering, and also instilling a foreboding sense of dread within. Overall, F.E.A.R is a great horror first-person shooter and is definitely in a tier of its own, especially with this entry and its sequels, which we'll discuss a little bit more in the future. It's a game that not only is an experience experience in itself, but is also mechanically sound even nearly 2 decades later. This is also a perfect series of games to play through if you have a want to play something that, especially for the first time, can genuinely get in your head, yet also deliver a huge blockbuster action set piece at the same time. F.E.A.R gets a 9 out of 10 and comes highly recommended to horror fans and FPS fans. Bonus if you're into both. Along with the sequels and the direct expansion, Perseus Mandate, and the Extraction Point, there's a lot to digest if you're willing to take the plunge. So again, I thank you if you made it this far in the video, and if you can find these reviews helpful, that's awesome. I'm glad you can find this as a resource. Check back often. We're gonna have several more videos on the F.E.A.R series, amongst other things, coming up here in the next few weeks. Stay tuned, and until next time, take it easy, stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.